Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I'm Justin Mason, lead fantasy writer and analyst at friendsoffantasybenefits.com. Joining me on this episode is Sam of the Dynasty Guru. Sam, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, boss. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. We've got a late night episode,
Yes.
though people won't see it for a couple days, so that's okay. They don't realize how late we're up, but we are grinding the late night hours right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're going to talk some Mariners baseball. And you are wearing your Big Dumper t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying not to freeze in the 35-degree weather
Ooh.
outside in my office right now, which is totally fine. Like it's
We're
winter
warmer
time.
than you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might actually only be like 38 right now, but it's supposed to get down to about 33 probably before the end of this podcast. So, yeah.
All right.
It's
You
fine.
enjoy that.
I will. We've had a lot of rain recently. Oh, it's 41. That's not too bad. So we've had a lot of rain recently, so I can't really complain. It's been real good for us. We needed that rain. How are you doing? And actually, first, before you even answer that, remind everybody where you reach on social media and then plug everything that you're doing.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Twitter at SamFBB1, and I do some writing and some podcasting over at the Dynasty Guru. I'm not really on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else, so that's pretty much the only way to find me. My DMs are always open if you want to chat about prospects or Mariners or about fantasy baseball or even life. So there it is.
And it is a good time to be a Mariners fan right now. You guys have a really exciting team, made the playoffs last year. And it's only going to get better from here, I think.
I'm hopeful for it. I've been rooting for the Mariners since before Ken Griffey Jr. Even stepped on the field for him. And so there's been a lot of disappointment. And coming into this offseason, it is so much fun to have real and valid expectations about what the team is going to do. And, you see fans getting cranky about lack of free agent signings, and you see people getting excited about signing prospects. Their J1 pick yesterday, Philneen, is I think that's how you pronounce his name, Philneen. I forget his last name, but he's indicative of the direction that this club is heading, that they seem to want to be doing things to win ball games and not be profitable. And as a fan, I'm all for it. I cannot wait for the season to start. I want to get into some questions being answered about how was their season last year? Is this something that they're going to build on? And is their off season enough to stay in a very suddenly hot AL West with Texas spending oh my God's amount of money and Houston filling in one of their biggest holes at first base with Abreu. So I'm just real pumped. I'm real excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really good season, fun season for you guys. It's going to be a real interesting race. I mean, even the Angels spending a little bit of money. So, I mean, outside of Oakland, it's going to be a very, very competitive division. And I'm rooting for you guys. It's a fun young team, and I'm highly invested in them in fantasy already. I hope to continue to get more and more invested in them as draft season goes on. Let's jump in and talk about them. Let's start with Big Dumper himself, Cal Raleigh, who had a breakout season with 27 home runs, only hit 211. You and I were kind of briefly chatting about him before we started recording, and I kind of mentioned, I think he is who he is at this point. He's a guy who is going to hit for power. I think the batting average should come up a little bit after hitting just 211, especially with a 226 BABIP. You got to think that normalizes a little bit. Where are you at in Cal Raleigh for fantasy this year?
Well, I'm all in. I think he's going to get the big side of a platoon, and I think that there is a lot of room for his game to grow. I think it's real easy to forget that last year he stepped in at a very young age, 25, and handled an incredibly explosive staff with a lot of grace behind the plate. The Mariners have a lot of pitchers that pitch very differently and have a lot of really wicked shit that they throw. And he handled himself well. And he also ended the season with hand problems. He had torn ligaments and other things, and still had a very strong September and October. Hit the home run that sent us into the playoffs. Sorry, almost said the two words I cannot say. I think his batting average has a chance to tick up a couple steps. I don't think he'll ever carry your team in batting average, but I don't think he's the hole he is. And so I'm all in. He's currently going a little after pick 150 in what I saw on NFBC. And so I like that. I like that pick, 9th, 10th round for your first catcher.
Yeah, I have no problem with Cal Raleigh. He's not necessarily like a top tier target for me, but a guy that if I don't end up with like one of the kind of more elite options, I have no problem falling back on.
Yep.
Do we care about Tom Murphy at all?
I don't think so. I think he's somebody that ends up being a fab pickup if something happens to Cal Raleigh. They also picked up Cooper Hummel this offseason, and although I think he's going to get play in the outfield, he was also a catcher, and you never know what the Mariners are going to do. I mean, they're fairly straightforward, but they've thrown some things at us before, and so as a fan, I don't know who's going to have the small side platoon. Truly, I think it's going to be Murphy, but I don't think he gets in a lot at DH, so not worth it.
Moving on into the infield, let's talk about Ty France. I feel like Ty France kind of gets overlooked just because it's a little bit of a boring profile. Is there another level to Ty France, or is this just kind of who he is?
Well, Ty France seems to get injured a lot, hit by pitches a lot. He doesn't seem to be able to stay consistent. I know that at the beginning of 2021, he started the season pretty strong until he had an injury, and I forget off the top of my head what that was, but it seemed to take him down a notch. I do think that we will see a season where he hits 300 in the next 3 to 4 years, potentially. We might get a 30 home run season out of him. But I think what you see is what you get, 270 to 290 hitter, 20 to 25 home runs, and real solid in the field. So he's going to get a ton of playing time. He really sits well as a 2-hitter in that lineup.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you wholeheartedly. I think he's just kind of a stable accumulator
Absolutely.
at first base. If he ever does learn to kind of raise that launch angle without giving up the contact, he could hit for more power. But I just don't know that that's ever going to happen.
So as an aside, when last year during the playoffs, I got to go to the Houston game, and the couple sitting behind me started this chant for Ty France that I just thought was fucking awesome. It was based off of the Ted Lasso, Roy Kent. They were doing the Ty France. He's here. He's there. He's every fucking where. Ty France. Ty France. So that's my new big cheer for this year for the Mariners. Just a little inside ridiculousness that I wanted to share.
I like that. Kolton Wong comes in via trade, part of the Jesse Winker deal. He will definitely make the defense behind your pitchers better, which I'm all for. I'm a huge Kolton Wong fan. It's kind of a crappy move for his own personal fantasy value. Are you drafting Kolton Wong?
Kolton Wong is going around pick 225 to 240, I think. And that puts him after the 15th round. If I need middle infield at that point, I might consider taking him, but I'm more interested in him in real life as a player versus a fantasy player. I think that there's a good chance that coming to Seattle dampens his bat a little bit, or he doesn't have the offensive season that people are looking for him. But I think he's going to do a lot working with JP up the middle. And so in real life, love him. Fantasy, not as much.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Do you feel the same about JP Crawford? Because, I mean, I don't know that there's another level for him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's teased it a couple times. He has, a phenomenal history as being an elite prospect. I was looking at him coming into talking about this, and they projected him to have power, and it just never came around. And so, maybe there's something else in him, but I think he's another one of these players that the Mariners have that are going to get a lot of run. So if you need an accumulator, if you need somebody at the end of your draft, I mean, he's going pick 375. So, he's a nice dart throw. He's good in draft and holds, but I'm not as excited about him in fantasy. I don't hold a lot of expectations for him, although they used to think very highly of him before he broke in with Philly. So,
yeah, I always had like high hopes for JP Crawford that he'd at least develop like a real speed component for fantasy at least, and potentially a decent hit tool. But it just
neither.
He's never really done anything.
Neither.
Yeah, and I mean the Mariners were, even in spite of the fact that they've talked about him like in such glowing light, they were in on a lot of shortstops this offseason. So that just tells me that like they don't see another upside or another level for JP Crawford either.
So they were and they weren't, because Dipoto has come out a couple times and has been, at least in his verbiage, all in. And the shortstops that we were in on, I think they were really trying to get him to play second or third. I really think that they believe in JB Crawford as the field glue guy. They talk about him in articles as being, this phenomenal presence and leader in the clubhouse. And I don't, I play fantasy baseball. I don't understand the component of chemistry and how that relates to fantasy production. So I'll leave that to people smarter than me. But, I see him playing at shortstop the next 2 years. And as a fan, I really would like to get somebody else there. Willie Adames would look beautiful in a Mariners outfit.
That he would. Do we care about Dylan Moore at all for fantasy?
No, just because you can't project when he's actually going to get playing time. I mean, I guess if you were in a daily league and you could set, he's got some speed and some pop, but they seem really committed to other players, and so at best he's a glue guy, and I don't think he gets enough bats to accumulate any real stats for you, again, unless you're in some kind of a daily league where he's going to play, because he does have a little bit of pop and he's got great speed. He's shown real proficiency on the base paths, and I think that coming into this year, it's not going to be any harder to steal bases than it was last year. So I think if you need speed at the end of the draft, potentially, but again, he's not one of those players that I'm excited about. Not like France, not like, their third baseman, Eugenio. There's definitely other players on that roster that in that infield that are going to have the playing time that Dylan Moore just isn't going to have to be relevant.
Let's talk about Eugenio Suarez, because he had a nice little bounce back here, hit for power, which I think some people were afraid of leaving Cincinnati. Would he be able to hit for the same kind of power? And he absolutely did. And he even had a little bounce back in batting average, though.
Yep.
It's hard to predict that second part will stick around. Where are you at on Eugenio Suarez?
I actually think that his batting average is going to take another big bounce. He had a significant decline in his batting average after a couple of years. It seems like he wanted to hit for more power and really kind of abandoned any kind of plate discipline he had the first couple of years that he was up. And I think that he is comfortable being in Seattle. He's in a lineup where he doesn't have to be the man every game like he was in 19 when he hit all those home runs for Cincinnati. And I'm hopeful, and I hope this isn't, fan helium being expressed, but I really think that what we saw last year is a stepping stone for him. He seems to be somebody that really feeds off of energy and his team. And again, I don't know anything about chemistry, so I'm not trying to be smarter than I am, but I think he's one of those guys where we see another 30 home run season. We see him hit the ball for a good average. I think he's really locked into the top of that lineup, and I'm super excited. I'm so hopeful. Justin, I am so hopeful that is really what comes to be. So where are you at on Eugenio?
I mean, the power is obviously legitimate. I think you can probably book him for 30 home runs again. I do worry about the batting average. He had his highest BABIP in the last 3 seasons. He had his worst zone contact of his career last year, and somehow was able to post his best batting average in quite a while. So I think I projected him for like a 222 batting average. But even like talking to Paul earlier today as we were covering third base, like he pointed out, like, hey, there's a legitimate chance that is probably too high. And I think you just have to be able to kind of hope that he's not gonna hit 200, but he could legitimately hit 200. It wouldn't surprise me. So if you're gonna draft Eugenio Suarez in fantasy for the power, you need to know that, like, you need to pair him with a Stephen Kwan, pair him with a guy that you know is going to deliver a pretty nice batting average to offset
Bellinger,
potentially.
Jordan at the beginning. Yeah.
So, let's move on out into the outfield and talk about Julio Rodriguez, who is just an absolute beast. What do you think year 2 looks like for Julio Rodriguez?
It's really hard to answer that question again because there's so much helium in this area, and getting to watch him on a daily basis was just so much fun last year that you don't. How do you take a step up from last year? I think he hits for a little bit more power. I think he's more comfortable in Seattle, and he hits for probably his floor is right around what he hit last year. I believe he's projected for 275, somewhere around there. And so I think he'll hit 280 or 290. I worry about his stolen bases. They really, after the first half of the season, they really limited his running. But Julio can do no wrong, and Julio, I'm pretty sure, does whatever Julio wants to do. Playing within a team construct, I'm not trying to say he, just take things in his own hands and does whatever. But I'm sure if he wants to steal a base, the Mariners are going to let him. I'm excited. I think we're looking at probably one of the top 3 players in the American League next year, behind Jose Ramirez and Aaron Judge.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the power is going to step up. I do worry about the stolen bases. He stopped running very much in the second half. But you have to wonder if like that was just a little bit of trying to protect him physically. He got nicked up a little bit in the second half. And I think he's a guy that clearly can steal 30 if he wants to steal 30 and they let him. So, I mean, you obviously, like, I think I projected him for 23 stolen bases, which would be kind of a step back, considering I projected him for almost, or I think 90 more plate appearances than he had in 2022. So, and I think the batting average may take a little bit of a step back. He doesn't make a ton of contact in the zone. He's below league average in that department. But I don't expect it to like crater or anything like that. I think 275 is actually a really good number for him. So 275 with upper 30s, maybe even 40 home runs, and 23 stolen bases, like that's still a top tier player. Even if there is a little bit of slip in some of the areas. So I got no problem with, I was just in a draft slow draft that started a few days ago, and the guy who had the first pick took Julio Rodriguez. I didn't blink an eye at it. It's not who I would take 1-1, but I can totally understand why someone would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I still think it's Jose Ramirez of Cleveland. That's a whole different conversation. But Julio is definitely in the conversation for the top 5. I think for outfielders, I'd take Jordan Alvarez before I took Julio Rodriguez. But Julio would be. I think Jordan Alvarez has the highest floor in baseball. Maybe Freddie Freeman outside of that, because I saw in August or November that they talked about Freddie Freeman has the highest floor in fantasy baseball. But I love Jordan. But anyway, different team.
You guys, one of your big acquisitions this offseason was Teoscar Hernandez, which was a fantastic trade for the Mariners, kind of really adding some more punch into the middle of that lineup. What do you expect from Teoscar in his first year in Seattle?
To sign a long-term deal before the season starts. I expect him to be a steady cleanup hitter all year. Hitting either 4, maybe 5, depending on if somebody else gets hot. But I just see an anchor. He seems to be a player that he doesn't necessarily strike out a little bit. He likes to strike out. He doesn't walk as much as I'd like, but he makes great contact. He makes hard contact. He stays on the field. He plays good defense. And we saw that game against Seattle where he hit 3 home runs against us and almost beat us in that second game. I mean, he steps up in big moments. I love that guy. I don't want to be too excited about it, but I think he's justifiable at his ADP. He's going around pick 70 to 75. So I like him as a second outfielder on a team.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you. He's not necessarily a huge target of mine necessarily, but I think he's going to be fine in Seattle. I don't think there's going to be any sort of drop off from leaving Toronto. And if anything, I think you can make an argument that you might actually see him start to run a little bit more. Toronto is a team that really stopped running, and stopped running a lot of their guys running. And Seattle's a team that's kind of middle of the pack in terms of stolen bases. And I think that may actually be a little bit light considering, they just didn't have a lot of the personnel necessarily that they want to steal bases with. So I could see Teoscar actually move up to double-digit stolen bases, 28, 29 home runs, 10 stolen bases, with like a 250 batting average. That's a pretty good price on a guy like Teoscar.
Yep. I was just going to say 30-10 is within his reach. That's definitely an outcome.
Now we have some real question marks, okay? So
I'm ready.
What is Jared Kelenic ever going to become the guy people thought he was when he was the number 1 overall prospect in baseball?
No. I mean, yeah, he's so young and development is not linear and blah, blah, blah. Like he hasn't shown me the ability to relax and slow the game down. He, at the end of 2021 had a really strong September. Again, at the end of this last season, he had some flashes. I think Seattle has, by not going after Brian Reynolds and some other players for their outfield, by targeting A.J. Pollock, who will be the platoon against left-handed pitching in the outfield with Kelenic. That's where I think that's at. I think Kelenic's being groomed to be a platoon player. Could he be more than that? Yes. Could he be an all-star? Yes. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer? Probably not at this point. He's not. That star has definitely lost a lot of luster, and I'm not waiting for it anymore. He's had a good amount of exposure. You would think you would have seen something more than what we've gotten already. But I love him. I'm still rooting for him, but no.
All right. So at this point, I mean, he has just been a bust, right, at the major league level. That being said, all he has done is dominated the minor leagues.
Yes.
And
intensely.
Yeah. And it's not like it's been like, hey, he's dominated, with homers and stolen bases, but his strikeout rate is high, or he has literally been a flawlessly fantastic minor league player at every level. I think this is all mental.
Yeah, it is. It's totally between his ears. And that's the frustrating part about it, is that I've always had this belief that him playing next to Julio Rodriguez was going to do each of them this good, that they were going to rub off on each other, that Julio seems to have more fun with it. And Jared seems to be this grinder that's constantly going, and that they would, co-opetition themselves into being the best versions of themselves. And Jared just can't. He's not letting it go mentally. There's something there. And so, no, I don't want to root against him. And yes, I think that there is greatness there. I've been maddeningly watching him in the minor leagues the last 3 years. Like, I want to see that translate at T-Mobile, but I just, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just going to say, no, I don't think we see it. I think that, it ends up being that he either becomes good somewhere else or becomes just a 4A outfielder.
I'm just not willing to give up on a guy with his talent. Are there players that just, whether you want to call them the yips or just mentally not strong, that never pan out in spite of the fact that they've got amazing tools? Absolutely, but I'm always going to bet on the talent.
Yep.
And I'm not ready to. And you have to remember too, like, it's not like he's been given like an extended, like, here is 2-3 months at the majors. He always gets yanked back down.
Yep.
He never really gets the opportunity to get his feet with it. I think he gets that opportunity this year. And I honestly think, I'm not projecting him to like be like a superstar or anything like that this year. But if you like, what's the one question I get asked now every year? It's who is this year's Cedric Mullins? Jared Kelenic fits the profile.
Yeah, I love him. I love Jared Kelenic. It's the jersey I got last year for my birthday. Like, I want to believe, but I can't have my heart broken. I need to have something happen where, I fall in love and have these feelings of guilt because I doubted him versus feelings of regret because I never let go. There's too many Mariners that I couldn't let go of in the past. So
it's fair.
I've only been burned 100 times. It's all right.
Is AJ Pollock even worth drafting in fantasy?
I don't think that he is going to get more than short side of the platoon run. I think you are right. I think this is the year that they have to see what's going on with Jared Kelenic. So I think that Pollock is going to hit left-handed pitching unless Kelenic wins the full-time job, in which case Pollock was here for a year to light a fire under Jared Kelnic's ass. His draft place is 380 to 400. So you're drafting him in the 25th to the 27th round. I suppose as a dart throw at the end of a draft, if you needed an outfielder, he's got an interesting track record and he's league average against right-handers. So he wouldn't be the worst outfielder in a really good lineup should an injury happen or should he catch fire against right-handers and Kelenic have, again, a hard time and they don't give him enough leash. But I'm not drafting AJ Pollock.
Do we care about Sam Haggerty or Taylor Trammell?
Ham Swaggerty, man. Bring him on. No, neither one of them. I love rooting them for them. They're those fun blue guys on your team that you're just like, oh, yeah, he's getting in a bat, or oh, yeah, they're starting him today. He's not going to appear on any of my fantasy teams. Neither one of them.
All right, let's move on into the pitching. Where are you at on Luis Castillo? Because I think he's one of these guys that some people think is an ace. Some people don't think he's an ace. Are you willing to take him as your number one or maybe even your number two starting pitcher?
I think he wins the Cy Young in the AL next year.
Whoa, okay.
So why? I think because the Mariners are a phenomenal pitching development and maintenance organization. They have shown the ability in the last 5 years to not only draft well and develop well, but to bring players in and really get the most out of their pitch mixes. Drive line is right down the street from Seattle in Kent or Maple Valley. It's just south of it. And so I know that there's been a lot of reports the last few years about a lot of Mariners among other teams going down there. I think that he is just phenomenal. He's got that it factor on the mound. He's just a bulldog. He's so much fun. He's got 4 pitches that just he seems to be able to throw. And I think the Mariners, after having an off season with him, because they traded for him in the middle of the season, and there's not going to be a whole lot of change happening during the season. But I think this offseason we're gonna see something in 2023 with him that he really turns a corner. I'm real excited about him.
I'm a little more skeptical of him as a true ace. He tends to be a bad whip guy. He was fantastic when he came to Seattle, but if you look at the schedule was pretty easy with 3 starts against Oakland, a start against Kansas City, a start against the Angels, 2 starts against Cleveland, a start against the beat up White Sox team.
Cleveland's a good squad. I liked their lineup last year at the end of the season.
All right, that's one. And a start against the Yankees, like that's. I mean, that's in which he didn't perform particularly well. I think he's fine. I think he's a fine number 2 starter. I just don't think he's. I don't think he's an ace in that regard.
Oh, I cannot wait. I think that this year he'll pitch. Injury aside, he'll pitch 30 plus games. He'll get 6 to 7 innings in each game. So we're looking at somebody who's probably going to pitch 200 innings. I trust him to get more than a K an inning. And I think that we see some things with him. The defense that he pitched in front of in Cincinnati also included that Eugenio Suarez at shortstop. They couldn't figure out what they were doing for a while there. It was not very tight behind him. I think you're going to see him throw with a confidence and results that we haven't seen yet. I think it all comes together for him next year. And he's only 30. He's been in the league for a long time, and he's still not, ancient. I think we got 3-4 good years with Castillo, and this is the year that he is the 2023 Robbie Ray of 2021.
There you go. All right. Who's your favorite of Logan Gilbert and George Kirby? And are you drafting either or both or neither in fantasy?
I'm in on the top 4 pitchers for the Mariners for fantasy. I'll tell you right now that if they come to me at their spots they're going at right now, I will take them. As a fan, I'm probably a bigger fan of George Kirby. I've collected some of his memorabilia, and I've gotten to watch him pitch more live when he was pitching for the minor league team that I get to do some work with. But I also just love Logan Gilbert. He seems to be that guy that just doesn't quit. He's constantly going for things and not. I don't feel like he overthinks it. He's willing. He seems to be comfortable in his skin. And they pitch a little differently, but they both have really good stuff. Logan Gilbert's really deceptive because he releases the ball so close to the plate and gets a lot of Ks with his 4-seamer. Kirby's got 3-4 pitches with phenomenal location. It seems to be having no problem with the AOS. He pitched as a rookie last year, and if you have his start records, if he had the harder starts than Luis Castillo or not, but I don't know how you pick one. I mean, maybe Kirby because he's got a higher upside, but I think Logan Gilbert's got a higher floor, so you really can't go wrong picking with either one of them where they're being drafted at. Gilbert's right after 100, and George Kirby's right at 100. So.
Yeah, I have Gilbert just a little bit ahead of Kirby, but I've got them both right there inside of my top 35. I've got Logan Gilbert at 29 and George Kirby at 32. Like them both a lot this year, especially with that defense behind them, and they both have very good command and control, which is what I love to see in a young pitcher. I like Gilbert's arsenal just a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more polished than Kirby, but I really can't complain with either. I'd be happy to have either. I've already drafted both in fantasy already this year, so I've got no problem. Robbie Ray, I love as an idea, but it just scares me every time he gets on the mound because you don't know how many home runs the dude is going to give up. But I mean, it seems like the games we saw in 2021 are fairly legitimate. Like, he really just completely changed his approach in Toronto and said, I'm assuming the coaching staff said, hey, people can't hit you. Stop trying to get them to come out of the zone, just attack them. And he does. Do you see him continuing with what he's been doing the last 2 years in 2023?
Yeah, I think that out of all the pitchers, I feel like in fantasy and real life, he's honestly our SP4, even having won a Cy Young a couple years ago and shown that he can be a workhorse 2 seasons in a row. But yeah, I like him. I have him for lots of innings and lots of Ks this year. And, I think for him each year, walks are going to be something that you're going to have to monitor. But he's so much fun to watch. And I follow somebody on Twitter called Robbie Ray's Pants. I mean, how can you not root for somebody who's got a Twitter feed about his pants that he wears in a baseball game? Like, I can't root against him, but I think he's our SP4, and I think he's in fantasy super relevant because he's going to be given the ball every 5 days, and he's going to throw innings. So
yeah, he's going to get you a ton of strikeouts too. I think he's one of those guys that, like, the ratios aren't going to be pristine necessarily, but I don't think we're going to go back to like Arizona Robbie Ray at any point.
No,
so I think he's going to be fine, and just loads you up with a crap ton of strikeouts. Do you care about Marco Gonzalez at all?
I don't think he finishes the year as our SP5. There's Marco Gonzalez and there's Chris Flexen, and I think they're better suited for long relief. I mean, it makes me sad because Marco Gonzalez a couple years ago was our ace for a couple of very bad Mariner teams, and so I've got some love for him, but I don't think Marco's got anything other than grit. And in real life that's great, but in fantasy where you need to strike people out as a starting pitcher to have real relevance, other than a streamer or a 2-star pitcher, if he's hot, I see him as a fab guy. I'm not as interested in him. The pitcher that I'm most interested in seeing actually next year, and I don't think it'll happen until June or July, but I think Matt Brash, they're still talking about him as a starter. He's developed a cutter, and everybody has their videos that they show in their off season, and looks like it's a nasty pitch for him. We'll see what it does against Major League hitting, but he's going to start the World Baseball Classic in Canada, and he's going to come out of the bullpen. So he's not changing his approach to start the season. He's going to come out of the Mariners bullpen. I think that there's a good chance that he ends up the season as our SP5. At least 30-40% chance that he could be who we have. So the Mariners are the Mariners, and again, they could be a number of people. Flexen could step up, Marco could step up and have a new pitch. Like I haven't heard any buzz or any writing on them other than we haven't traded either of them, so they're here and there are starters. But I'm excited about Matt Brash a lot.
Nice. Who leads this team in saves?
Paul Sewald.
Yeah.
So they had 7 pitchers last year in their bullpen that got saves, and 2 of them, Drew Steckenrider and Eric Swanson. Steckenrider got DFA'd, and Swanson was part of the deal for Teoscar. It was Eric Swanson and Adam Macko that went over there. So Diego Castillo, Matt Festa, Chris Flexen, Andres Munoz, and Paul Sewald were the 5 relievers that got saves. They've picked up a couple minor relievers, but I don't think anybody that's going to be competing for late inning work. And the Mariners, as much as they are a team that has a couple options to throw at you, they tended to be pretty good about giving Paul Sewald the saves all year. Andres Munoz is definitely long-term. If we were talking about a dynasty angle to this, I would say have Anthony Munoz, because probably as soon as 2024, but maybe it's 2025, he will take over as the closer. I don't see that happening this year. Paul Sewald will get the majority of the saves for the Mariners.
All right. it would, if something happens to Seawald, is Munoz the next guy up, you think?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And they've given him, he's that eighth inning guy right now. And there's, I'm a big fan of having bullpens where the relievers know what their role is, that can have flexibility, but establish a routine that they're used to doing things. Anthony Munoz seems to just not care about where he's at or who he's facing or what the inning is. He's just, every situation I've seen him thrown in, he's dominant, including when they've thrown him in the ninth. So I truly believe he is a lock for number 2 in that bullpen.
All right. Well, Sam, thanks so much for joining me. This is awesome.
I really appreciate getting to come and talk about Mariners. I always feel like I'm too, I've taken too much helium, that my opinion is too high on them. So it's nice to hear somebody else express their love for the team that I love. So I appreciated it.
Well, it's a good, fun, young team. Looking forward to watching them play a lot this year. I remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug all your work.
Okay. Well, again, on Twitter, I'm at SamFBB1, and I do writing for the Dynasty Guru and podcasting, Peace, Love, Baseball, and Dynasty Divorces. So
there we go.
That's me.
You can reach me on Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. Email me of the show, friendsfantasybenefits@gmail.com. Follow Friends with Fantasy Benefits on Twitter at Fantasy Benefits. Give us a 5-star review. Really, really helps us out. And we are giving away those RotoWear t-shirts for a review each month. So we'll be doing random drawing at the end of the month. I've gotten a lot of reviews recently, so I really, really appreciate everybody who's been giving those reviews. And hopefully that gets you entered, or that gets you a shot at that RotoWear t-shirt. You can read all my work over on Fangraphs, where I'm writing daily at this point. And I'm on the Sleeper in the Bus podcast, the TGFBI podcast, and I'm doing these 30 team previews in 30 days for Friends of Fantasy Benefits. For Sam, myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball offseason.
Peace and love.